On this episode, I wanted to bring together three amazing Atlanta leaders who spend a great deal of their time mentoring others. Karen Houghton, Anand Thaker, and Jermaine Brown all joined me coincidentally from the Atlanta Tech Village, probably the place in Atlanta where the most mentoring happens. And I should know as I started Dragon Army in the Tech Village in 2013. Listen along as these leaders talk about how to find the right mentor, how to be a great mentee, and why Atlanta leads when it comes to mentorship and helping others be successful. Let's get into it. Okay, this is a first for me, you guys. It's the first time I've had a whole lot of people on the podcast. I'm really excited about this. So why we're here, I had Anand on a podcast with me a month ago or so, and we were talking about mentorship and advisory boards and so forth. And, you know, we thought, wouldn't it be great to grab a few other people who we know are passionate about that, who are mentors, around mentors, have mentors, and bring them all together and just have a chat about it. So that's what we're going to try to do today. Let me ask you guys to say who you are and what you do. Karen, we'll start with you.
Hey everyone, my name is Karen Houghton. I'm the Vice President at Atlanta Tech Village, so on brand today for everybody. I'm also a venture partner over at Atlanta Ventures, so passionate about startups, building community, a strong ecosystem, and changing the world through technology.
Yes, and very much on brand. Jermaine, how about yourself?
So Jermaine Brown, so founder of CCAW Automotive Group. So now recently I joined Outlander Labs as a venture partner. So going to the other side of the table.
Nice.
And I'm Anand Thaker, and some of you guys already heard who I am, but eclectic background and various serial entrepreneur activities. But lately I've been, after my last exit, been working with the MarTech space, investing, advising, and navigating performance leaders and growth investors in the arena.
All right. And interestingly, the three of you are at the Atlanta Tech Village right now, aren't you?
Is there a better place to be, Jeff?
There's not. There's not, and I can say that. Which brings me to the first thing I'd love to chat about. We were all at the village in the early days when construction was happening around and so forth. What are some of the early stories you guys remember from those days?
No AC.
No AC. Oh my gosh, the summers, the elevator. No elevator. We were on the 5th floor.
Yeah, we had a solid 6 months with no elevators on a 6-story building. But amazingly, everyone was pretty good natured about it. And we were like, what? I think we turned it into a stair step contest. And the days we didn't have air conditioning and an elevator were less ideal.
Well, I think there's no better way. I mean, I always talk about Atlanta Tech Village is not just a space, it's a community, right? And that's one of its biggest strengths. And there's no better way than helping people move furniture around or go up and down the stairs and meet folks, right? Those serendipitous relationships that you were creating, Karen, right? That's the way. Now, I remember that. I think my biggest takeaway has been, I'd known most of the community before the building, but it was really, you could throw a rock and hit anybody and you have like an incredible conversation. Yes. It was amazing. You could not find that too many other places.
I think it's definitely a place where the community happened before the building happened. And we were a startup, right? So, I mean, obviously David Cummings founded the village, funded it all, but we didn't know what we were doing. And so it was an element of like, we're learning and having this big commercial building that none of us had been in commercial real estate. So it was like this adventure. And I think a lot of us, like those original people, there's always a tie having experienced that together so many years ago now.
But you had a vision, right, Karen? I mean, y'all had like it just seemed like it was very thoughtful in the overall like energy and what you were trying to accomplish. Maybe tactically it was, we'll figure it out as we go, but.
Oh yeah, it was very fluid in like how we got there, but the vision and mission from the beginning was always very clear about who we wanted to be, the community, the kind of entrepreneurs we wanted to attract, and just how we wanted them to want to be there. Like, how do we create a place where it feels authentic to them? It truly makes you a better entrepreneur. It has the energy and the community and kind of supportiveness that you need as well. So it's a bit of magic sauce, but you guys are a big part of what made it so special right from the very beginning.
Yeah, and I remember I actually had 2 offices for like a year, if I remember correctly. So I came, I think it was DC and Craig and all those guys, like, you should come over here. And, oh, by the way, you don't live that far. I remember for like a year I paid rent in 2 places. And then I was just like, it was just a better environment for me, right? Like the things I learned in that year were just kind of transformative. So, and then the relationships and the people and just the overall energy. So, yeah, I mean, it was great. You know, there were those days where you were like, okay, this is interesting, but you know, I think you guys did a great job of communicating like what was about to happen, so that everybody at least had their expectations set, right? So.
One thing that I loved about it so much was that I've worked in high rises and different buildings throughout my career, and I've never been in a place where almost everybody just loves what they do, because you're not starting a company and dealing with the difficulties of all that unless you really are passionate about it and love it. But go into any other building in Atlanta and you're on the elevator and people are like, oh, it's Monday. Oh God. And in the Village, it was like, yeah, it's Monday. Let's do this. So there's nothing like it in my opinion. And Karen, you're right. In those early days when there was some, oh my gosh, the AC, it was just like another chance to bond with people.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Like there's not a bad Monday when you're here, right? Everyone's like, what happened over the weekend? Like I love walking around, and when I talk to people, it's often like, what's the best thing that's happened to you this past week? And it's like, just by asking that question, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, you actually, these are big milestone things that we want to celebrate with you. And sometimes it's the bad news too. But I think the more you can just share and communicate, number one, you feel less lonely, right? And then number two, it also is inspiring, because I'm constantly inspired in this building by the caliber of people who are in here and what they're building and creating and how nice they are, right? Yeah. You can be really smart, but if you're not kind in it too, I think those people quickly find we're not the best place for them either.
Yeah, no, agreed. And so that leads us into the topic of the day. What I love about the Village is whether someone is a mentor or not, everybody wants to help each other. And I saw it so many times in the cafe kitchen areas on each floor. There's just conversations. People are like, oh yeah, I have a contact here and I can help you there. But I know that mentorship and advising is core to all 4 of us. I'd love for each of you to just talk about maybe how that became an important part of your life. Was it being at the Village, or was it a certain person in your life that helped you? Or talk to me about how you found mentorship to be a core part of who you are today. And anyone can start.
I'll go. So I think for me, mentorship, even though I didn't know that's what it was during each one of those relationships, has been pretty pivotal. But also, as I look back, during different stages of life, I've had different mentors to help guide me through that stage of life, right? So, starting when I was an adolescent, right, like I had a family friend who kind of took me under their wing, and I would say that I was probably a little stubborn towards my parents, and they were able to kind of recognize that and mold me and aim me in the right direction, right? And ultimately, it ended up being a game changer for me, kind of looking back, right? And it got me on a good path. I went to school and all these other things, and I attribute it to them. And even during college, I had some bosses who were, probably 20 years older than me, but that saw the raw talent, as they call it, right? They were like, we just need to like polish you up a little bit. And, and invested time and energy in me, and, gave me some opportunities to do some very unique things. And, it was transformative, right? And even as I, kind of transitioned into corporate America, while it wasn't the funnest time for me, I had some good mentors who were able to kind of help me navigate it, and ultimately help me like figure out that it was probably not the best place for me, right? So, it's been pivotal for me. But I think that the best mentorship has actually come as an entrepreneur. And for me, it's actually come in group settings where there's, I don't know, it's really more peer groups, but, people that have accomplished great things and people that are trying to accomplish great things that are similar to what I'm doing, and then being able to share their experiences, provide me with feedback, and just be candid and honest about what they see and some of the things that I'm strong at and some of the things I'm weak at, right? So, it's been an interesting journey for me. And I think that without mentorship, I don't know where I'd be, honestly. And I think it's key, it's critical. everybody has gaps they need filled. Everybody's trying to figure things out. And if you can have someone fill those gaps and provide you with their experiences, it can accelerate you getting to where you want to get. So definitely helped me out, hands down. Love
that. What about you, Karen?
I was mentored similar to Jermaine. I think in high school, I was a part of a ministry called Young Life, and super passionate about it. And it changed my life in a lot of really great ways. My faith's really important to me, and it was part of that journey. But it was also just having an adult, Jermaine, to your point, who was not my parents, who could come alongside me and just let me be exactly who I was, and still kind of love me through that, and still guide me and encourage me to make good choices and provide guidance as needed. And that was such a life-changing and rewarding experience that I think had a dramatic effect on the outcome of who I am as an adult and who I'm still becoming, that I turned around and I was a Young Life leader for 12 years. So continue to be a part of that organization, but I was like, I want to give back to that. And so I actually walked through life with three groups of high school girls. So I would pick them up as freshmen, see them through their senior year, pick them up as freshmen, see them through their senior year. Became a mom and was like, that was a great use of my time and purpose, but I need to put some energy over here now. So I don't currently do that anymore, but it's been one of the most rewarding aspects of my life to have it on both ends, to have received it and experienced it. And of course, in my professional life, I think there's so many amazing people that I talk to and receive guidance and advice from. I mean, Anand has come alongside me in several different things. Of course, David Cummings and David Lightburn. So I'm thankful to have had a lot of great people in the tech community who have allowed me opportunities to grow and learn. And there's always the digital mentors too, right? So there's people I follow on blogs and on Twitter that I'm learning from constantly that I've never met in person too. And so I often talk to people about mentorship. They're like, how do I know somebody? And I'm like, first, you're at Atlanta Tech Village. Let me introduce you to like 40 people who are volunteering their time to like help you. But there's also like, if you're more introverted or you're not sure what to do, I'm like, read, listen to podcasts, like what you're doing here, Jeff. And there's all sorts of opportunities to kind of grow and learn and gain information in more non-traditional in-person ways too.
Yeah. And I love that you started it with Young Life. Did you grow up in Atlanta?
I did. Yes. Cobb County.
Okay. Yeah. I did not participate in Young Life, but a ton of my friends did because I grew up in Stone Mountain, and fantastic program.
Yeah, I love it. They had a lot of fun. I was like, who are these people and what are they doing? And actually that kind of looks fun. Can I go?
Yeah, no.
Starts, right?
Good times. All right, Anand, how about you?
Yeah, I won't take too much time because I know we talked a lot about it from before, but two critical kind of mentors. I mean, one was my dad. He was, first generation, came over, and he didn't really, he came over before he even finished his education. And he pretty much taught me a lot about how to be self-sustaining. And then ironically, interestingly enough, I had a mentor later, and she taught me how to be more collaborative with other people, be more open on, getting help or being comfortable with being uncomfortable, that type of thing, where I was always very introverted, which I still am, but I mean, it's just more of a sense of you have something to offer, you should, speak up or talk about it or share with it. And it's okay that if you get positive or negative feedback, how you take that and you make yourself grow. So some of my early mentors, I mean, one mentor that I have, it's a story for another day, but it's if you know who Seymour Cray was, I ran into him one day, and I was in DC, and it was a very early age, and it was months before he actually had passed unexpectedly. And we had this long conversation as he was looking at a nervous guy in the corner. He's like, and the conversation we had basically came down to, there's nothing, you're here because someone wanted you to be here. So don't worry about being nervous, just be who you are. And, who cares what people have to say about you. So people know me being direct, and that's probably that's one of the many mentors, like Karen said. I mean, there's just so many after that, but it was one being somewhat building things and being self-sustaining. And then the other was actually not relying completely on yourself if you want to, build great things or amazing things. And of course, I've been a fan of community and what that really means in terms of creating and formulating and understanding what that means. So when I see it, it's an incredibly powerful, aspect of things. And, but yeah, I've had mentors who've helped me, connect with other folks. They've helped me see things that I didn't see myself. They've certainly, as we talked about last time, I'm never done. There's plenty of folks. I'm still way unpolished and happily, I guess, uncompletely satisfied with myself.
Yeah, no, that's great. Do you guys think that that's part of maybe what is unique about Atlanta is how willing people are to help others and to lend a hand? I mean, I'm sure it happens in other places, but I've seen a difference, say in New York, for instance, in some of the relationships. It just doesn't seem the same. Do you think that's something that's special about this place?
We're not the city of hospitality for nothing, right? I think it's a culture that we have built intentionally. I think part of it's a little bit natural just from our history and all of that, but I have people come to the village a lot, and we have 4 core values, and one of them is be nice.
Yeah.
And often we get people who come, West Coast, New York, and they're like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I don't have time for that. I'm building a company. And I'm like, cool. When you're having a really hard time or you get stuck, what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. Like, it's kind of nice to have someone who's nice. You can say, hey, can you help? Or can I come alongside? And even as our ecosystem has grown, it's very much a thing of, all of us can grow together, and we need more density and we need more people. And I think as long as we keep telling that story of, all ships rise with the tide, right? So there's an element of we need each other to kind of continue to get our city on the map. And so I think it's a bit of everything, but I've had a few people have a sticker shock kind of when they're, or like culture shock when they're like, wait, like, how does this work? Like, it just does. It's real. It's authentic. Don't make it a thing. Just come be a part of it. And they're like, I get it now. I get it.
I think it's definitely unique coming from an environment that's less entrepreneurial and probably less open. I think that's one of the things that attracted me to Atlanta when I got here. And I came straight out of undergrad, right? But I couldn't pinpoint what it was then, but I think that's definitely one of the things. And over the years, I've been presented with opportunities to, leave Atlanta, and I've, evaluated other cities, and I'm always like, nah, it's just the city's unique, and that's definitely one of the things that I think makes it unique, right? I mean, I think that people want to help other people. People have different experiences and backgrounds. It's just an interesting city, right? I mean, you have other cities that have a mixture of people, but they're not always as open as and inviting as Atlanta is. People don't genuinely want to help each other as much, right? So I think it's something that, from someone not being from here or not raised here, I think it's definitely something that's unique and that stands out a lot.
Yeah, in the last decade, I've been around, I spent a lot of time in different ecosystems and traveling for a variety of reasons. While Atlanta has definitely a competitive advantage over it, it's not completely unique, but it's definitely a advantage over most places. Like you mentioned, New York, it's not exactly that way, but the culture there is different, right? It's if you grew up there, then you know how to, you know what networking looks like or how it works. If you're in the Bay Area, you get a very familiar feel. You can grab coffee with anybody and do your pitch, and get what you need out of it. If you go to Seattle, there's a sense of that as well. Toronto, Vancouver, some of the smaller areas, they all have interesting places. I was in Israel for a while. Like they all are like, they'll set up tours for you to talk to a series of people. But I think what makes Atlanta stand out more so than anybody else is that we think very holistically about how we want to help you. It won't just be the topic right at hand. We want to be able to say, oh, well, you're from out of town. How can we help you figure out the landscape or the layout of the land? Or, here's not only people to meet for what you're looking for or asking for, but here's a tangent one degree away of people you should be talking to as well, or groups you should be a part of, or, places like Atlanta Tech Village that you should, come and support or become a member for. member for. So I think that's one of the biggest advantages on top of a lot of other things that we have here in Atlanta. But we hopefully will continue to keep that as we infuse, obviously a lot of people who are coming to Atlanta from out of town.
How would you guys advise a young person today that is hearing this and has a startup or a company and wants to approach a particular potential mentor or two? Like, what are things they need to do before they make that ask? How should they make that ask? Should they make that ask? Like, how do you guys advise them on that? Jermaine, you got something that you want to say about that?
I was saying that too. I'm like, what you got, Jermaine?
I think that you have to know what you want first, right? It's really hard for people to help you if you don't really know, you don't have an ask, or you don't know what you want, right? And I think that mentorship is broad, right? And it can mean a lot of different things, a lot of different people. But if you can come to the table and say, hey, I'm looking to try to do X or to get to X place, right? I think that it becomes a lot easier for someone to help you. As far as how to make the ask and things of that nature, I think that most people are pretty open to people reaching out to them, right? I mean, I know for myself personally, like people can go and email me and, all these other things, like I'm accessible, right? But I think honestly, you'd be surprised the amount of people that don't reach out. Mm-hmm. Like, so when you actually do, you automatically put yourself like in like this rare territory, right? But I think that if you do that and then you have an idea of what you want, or at least the direction you want to go, like, I think that it becomes a compelling case for somebody to be like, you know what, yeah, like I'll try to help this person, right? And they may not be the right mentor for you. So if they say no, it's not a bad thing. But they may be able to introduce you to somebody that's a better fit for you, right? That's
good. What else?
I guess I'll, this is part of the inspiration of wanting to, sort of reignite what we were doing at the Tech Village with the Mentor Advisor program. I saw that there was when you feel like there is a deliberate attempt to make and collect and curate the right kind of mentors for a variety of different reasons, I think there's a more comfort in anyone who comes from outside or maybe even within the community to approach a mentor and advisor and know that, they're there to help, right? And to Jermaine's point, be very specific with your ask as you do it, because if someone can't articulate how they would be able to help you, because maybe they won't be the right person, they should be able to articulate very clearly to someone else, what you're asking for. And things happen very quickly once you're able to do that.
Once you know what you want to ask, Karen, from that perspective, what would you be asking of them? Like, how much time is too much time? Should there be a first meeting to feel each other out? I mean, how do you approach so that it's an easy yes for the mentor?
I have lots of opinions about this. Often, like, I would say approach it like dating in a non-weird way, but hey, like, don't do the pick your brain, to y'all's points. Please don't send an email that's like 20 paragraphs because we're all busy and no one will read it. So like, if you're like, how do I make sure I get a response? I would say do not send a canned email. So if I'm going to reach out to Jermaine, I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to look at his LinkedIn. I'm going to find his social media profiles. I'm going to know exactly why I want to talk to Jermaine. And then I'm going to send a pretty darn short email, like 5 sentences or less. I'm going to say, Jermaine, I really admire how you have built this company and where you've come from and what you've done. And I know now you're in venture capital and you're making these connections. And I watched your lesson lab that you taught for Started Up Georgia. My problem that I'm facing now is X. And I would greatly appreciate any time, whether call, Zoom, just to connect and see if there are some ways that you could help me. And let me know what availability you have, whatever. So like make it a very specific and don't ask for like 2 hours. So maybe it's like a 20-minute call, right? First day, like 20-minute call, just a couple questions. And then once you have that first interaction, you'll kind of know, like, is it a fit? Did they give you good advice? Because mentors don't necessarily always give you good advice, or they'll give you their advice, and then it's up to you to kind of figure that out. And it's also just personality. So it's like a therapist, right? Like there are lots of good therapists out there, but like one may be a right fit for me and one may be a right fit for Jeff, right? So I think from there, like, you don't have to email and say, will you be my mentor? Because I think that's kind of awkward too. It's like you don't want someone to be in a relationship with you before you've had coffee. So it's an element of just like getting to know them. Is it a good fit? And then I think as you have that first ask, when you have that meeting, it says so much about you if whatever you ask them about, if they gave you advice, actually go do it.
That's right.
A lot of people don't do it. Like, go do it and then report back.
Yes.
So, hey, I know you recommended a couple of these things. I actually went and read this book. Here's 2 takeaways that I found a lot of value of that really applied. Thank you so much. This has led me to a second question. Could we do a second 20-minute conversation so I can ask you your thoughts on this? And then I think as you go to 2 or 3, right, you're dating in a non-romantic way, but it's an element of like, hey, you know what? I've gotten so much value out of these 2 or 3 meetings. I'm growing and scaling this company, and I really need somebody with the experience and the insight that you've provided me. Would you be okay with a monthly meeting, maybe even 30 minutes to an hour, like just checking in? If you do it in that way, there are very few people that are going to say no. And if they do, then you don't want them to be your mentor anyway. So
I love that. And I love the idea of the follow-up. That's so important. It shows that you're listening and that you're trying. And even if you don't do the thing, explaining why. We spent time, I spent time thinking about what you said. Here's the reasons I didn't. That just, it's a good discipline to get into, but it's such great advice in general. What about what's advice for mentors? Because I think some people agree, they get the ask, they agree, but they really don't think through, how do I make this most, impactful for the mentee? What should I be doing? What would you give to advice someone who's going to be a mentor for the first time?
I think acknowledge that you're not always right and you may not have all the answers. At least for me, it's kind of, I get a lot of asks and there's still so much. To Anand's point earlier, I'm like, I'm learning all the time. I'm reading all the time. I'm changing my mind about things. So there's an element of like, when I'm talking to somebody, I always say, I'm going to give you my opinion. And like, this is my opinion and my bias and kind of where I'm coming from. Take it or leave it. You're going to ask 10 people, you may get 10 opinions, or like go ask several other people. And if you start to see, patterns in the responses you're getting, then maybe that gives you more direction. But just being willing to be humble and kind of acknowledge what you do and don't know.
I love that. What about you guys?
I think also understanding when something is out of your wheelhouse or your area of expertise, right? Like, hey, I'm probably not the best person to answer that specific question, right? I think that's a lot better than trying to force an answer or have a mentee feel like, you should have the answer, right? Or like, it's okay to say, I don't know. And I actually think it's healthier because it shows to the mentee that like, it's okay not to know, right? So I think that's important. I think also to you decide to mentor, coming up with making a commitment to it, right? Like sitting down and thinking about like, all right, like, do I really have the time? Am I really going to put the energy into this? Because, sometimes when you mentor people, you have things that you need to do that come out of those sessions, right? I call it homework or whatever, right? And, sometimes depending upon the entrepreneur I'm talking with, I may do a little bit of prep as well, right? There may be a couple of things I need to read or whatever to get prepared to be able to have a conversation with them, right? So, are you able to commit and are you able to do that, right? So that you can make it value add to the other person on the other side. I think that's important. And I think, it's flattering to be asked to be a mentor or advisor or whatever. But I think sometimes the appropriate answer can be, hey, this isn't no for a variety of different reasons, right? This isn't a good time for me. I'm not an expert in this, et cetera, right? But that's okay, right? And I think that, some people feel like they have to say yes and you don't have to be honest with you.
Yeah. Anand?
Yeah, I agree with both of them. I mean, if I were to add anything, it would be, if you know that mentoring is building a relationship, to Karen's dating point, right? You're not going to just, date one time and move on. If you're giving advice, it's cool. Like you say, look, let me give you some advice. Here you go. And then be done. Right. But if you're intent on being a mentor, then you also are dating, right? You're trying to find, the right relationship to have in terms of in a mentee. And sometimes you might actually seek out somebody, and that's probably a conversation for another day, but maybe you'll be seeking somebody out, and there will be a fit that makes sense. You see something, a potential in somebody, and you don't go up and say, I'm going to be your mentor, but it would be more of like, look, I see a lot of potential in you. I see like what you're trying to do. I love what you're doing. How are you doing it? Whatever who you are, whatever the case may be. And you can approach it from that standpoint. And the one other thing I would say is, if you're going to develop those relationships, don't take on too many, right? You're doing a disservice to yourself. You'll end up burning out, and you'll be doing a disservice to the mentee. So take a healthy number of people. We try to encourage that, in programs that, we've been involved in. And I think it was one of Karen's ideas to be like, let's just, limit the number of mentees or mentors, how many mentees a mentor can have, so we can ensure that there's a good quality relationship that develops between the two of them.
And I think also having an awareness of like, it's your whole, ideally it's the whole person, right? So sometimes even in mentorship relationships, like if you're a startup founder, it's like, you have business questions, but also in a mentoring relationship, it's like life, it's impacting your family, it's impacting lots of life choices, your finances. So it doesn't have to just be, how do I find my product market fit? It can also be like, hey, how do I get a, work-life balance? How can I pursue this relationship or still be intentional with my children when I'm working insane hours? So I think you got to be willing to get in it with people if you really want to be a mentor.
Yeah, that's well said. Well said. There's another thing that comes up too, where this is something Jermaine and Karen do, regularly, is they write, right, and share their knowledge to a broader base. And it kind of goes to the earlier point of, if someone wants to earn your mentorship, then they probably read your stuff, right? And they've absorbed some of it, or maybe they might point to it and say, look, I read some of this, and it gives them a character of how to self-select whether you would be a good mentor or not. And for every mentor, I mean, if you're open to sharing and wanting to share, you need to start writing and sharing, in a digital format, which, to be honest, like, to be open, like, I mean, this is what David Cummings started doing, why he wrote. He realized that he's got a lot of people he wants to help, but he can't help everybody. He's probably hearing the same questions over and over again. And it's something that he can, curate into a post of some sort. Then that means what happens is, if they've done their homework, you can have a more meaningful, direct conversation and support in that capacity. And I think even Jermaine lately has been crushing it on that front. And, I think we talked that you've had some of those direct conversations as opposed to the more high level stuff that people have been having.
I mean, I think I know more about Jeff and Jermaine as many years as I've known y'all, and in all of our different interactions, I know more about both of y'all from what I've read that you've both written than probably what we've talked about in person.
It's funny.
It's interesting. So I will say this about, writing and sharing, right? I agree. You can only directly mentor so many people, but I think that when you share your thoughts and experiences and put it out there, at least in my experience, I have been shocked at like the reach of it, right? And then, people that I would have never thought gotten value. My mom reads my stuff, right? So like, that's like a whole nother, I was like, oh, wow, right? So, and it's not that she really cares what I'm writing about, right? But like, she's a mom and she wants to know what's going on with me, right? But it just goes to show the reach and the like impact you can have. And I've had people, when I've talked about and shared things that, were probably challenges for me, that it really motivated them and it helped them kind of get through what they were going through. And I've gotten notes about that stuff from them, right? So I think that, to your point, like, that's a great way to like help people in, I guess, kind of an indirect way, but it can be very powerful, right? It takes a lot of time and energy, but once you write it, it's out there, and you just never know. It can help somebody tomorrow, it can help somebody a year from now, it can help somebody 5 years from now, right? Like, I'm still surprised. So
Jermaine, now that your mom reads your stuff, does she know what you do?
Sort of.
One of the things that I've been doing, which I found really helpful when you're talking about like, hey, we all have limited time. I think all of us here, have big hearts, want to help people. So there's an element of limited time. And then when you get requests and making sure they're good requests, depending on what their ask is, I actually have a little bit of a friction point when people reach out to me. So like, even if it's an awesome email, like we can't have coffees with everybody, at least pre-COVID. These days I don't have coffee with anybody. But I would just say, hey, like if it's about venture capital, like being a female in VC, I will respond to any email I get like that. But I'll also say, go read this and this. And I give them 2 things to read. And I say, after you read that, let me know what you think and we'll have coffee and talk about it. And it's helping still because I'm still answering some of their questions, but it's something that they can learn and all of that. And I would say 95% of the time, I never get a response back, which is like, cool. I hope that those 2 links gave them all the information they needed, or maybe they reached out too soon and were just looking for the least, like, you know, way of getting that information. Like, well, I'll just ask somebody. And I'm like, hey, like, I don't have a lot of time, so let's streamline it. And if they do come back and have read it, those conversations, I will have 2-hour coffees with them. And they're always amazing conversations. They usually learn from them as well as hopefully provide some guidance.
The awesome takeaway is that is, you know, it's okay to make your potential mentees do a little homework before, you know, they talk to you, have more meaningful, fruitful conversations. And mentees, guess what? Like, there's no easy, straightforward, you know, quick ask, you know, of us. We want you'll have to earn your mentorship, and it's okay. Right. And for mentors, it's okay to make them earn it a little bit. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. I think that's a start of a good, healthy relationship that way.
I haven't done that exactly, but I like that, Karen. For companies or founders that I advise on a regular basis, I do ask them 3 questions before we meet. And if they don't answer those 3 questions, I'm like, I guess we're not meeting, right? Because it helps focus the conversation. It helps me understand like what they're going on. Like, because I can spend 20 minutes trying to figure out like what's going on, as compared to reading something, but okay, we need to dig in there today, right? And the conversation is much more effective, right? So they may kick and scream a little bit, but eventually they like it because it actually it uncovers some things that sometimes they don't even realize, right? It's like, what's your biggest challenge right now? They're like, I don't know, you know? It's like, well, you should know that, you know?
I love the 3-question thing. I'm gonna have to start doing it.
Yeah, to be fair, I don't do that with any villager. It's just outside our community. And a lot of that's when you have 1,200 people, you got to start to limit it a bit. But that's smart, like ask questions.
You're way more popular than I am. So.
Not true. Not true. And I know that because of how many times we ask you to help us with something.
I love, David, we talked about David writing and that being a way. And sometimes when someone does reach out to me for advice or mentorship, and I ask them what sort of the topic is, I can go back to blog posts and say, hey, here's some stuff. And so to Karen's point, like, here's things you can read. But what I love, one of the things, David and I have had this conversation a lot. One of the things he does is he'll send someone and say, hey, you need to read this book and fill out the 1-page strategic plan and then come back to me, which is like, it's awesome because, you know, sort of like what you do, Karen, you have to show that you're committed. And this is important. If you're not willing to do those things, why are you going to be willing to act on anything that I tell you, right? So I think that's a really good sort of litmus test. So my last sort of question for you guys is where would you point people from a digital perspective? So we know we're going to go, I'll link Jermaine's blog in the show notes. Where else would you point people who are looking for mentorship, but maybe they can't get a hold of the person or they're just not ready to go out and meet with someone, so they're going to get it digitally? Where are some places that you would point them for good company, leadership, tech, nourishment online?
Who wants to go first?
You go first.
I think for mentorship specifically, I think that it depends upon what you're actually looking for or what you need, right? And then you got to go, honestly, just go do some research and go find some people in that space. I do think that there's an element of you need to know what's going on in the ecosystem or the environment that you're in. So getting on certain lists, email lists and things of that nature that kind of curate what's going on in in the Atlanta ecosystem or whatever ecosystem you're in, I think that that's a good place to start, right? And then from there, once you kind of figure out what your need is, you'll probably see some themes in some of those curated lists about what's going on and people that you should probably talk with. So that's my 2 cents. And if you have somebody that you feel like is could be a potentially good mentor, but it's just not a good timing for you. I mean, if they have content out there or whatever, or if they're doing interviews, podcasts, or whatever, right? Like just I guess, for lack of a better term, just kind of stalk them out a little bit, right? And just kind of listen and know what's going on, because you can get a lot of the information, a lot of their thoughts through osmosis through that way, right? So
It's really good.
Well, in a different season, I would have said Twitter. These days, you may want to avoid Twitter. But I think in the Atlanta startup ecosystem, you have a lot of people who are active on Twitter, who readily give information, who are quite responsive. And I know people who have literally built their kind of personal brand and reputation based off a blog and their Twitter activity, which I think is really cool. I also think the startup ecosystem report that Startup Atlanta created is insanely helpful. And I know you're saying digital, but it gives you all the players in Atlanta. So from kind of the tech hubs and the venture capital and the educational opportunities and all of that, I think it's good to go download it. It's free. It's a PDF. And just be like, all right, here's all these different organizations. And then starting to get plugged into some of them are the way that you start to meet the people that then you can also digitally engage with. So Atlanta Tech Village, like, you don't have to be a member to come to our workshops. You don't have to, and pitch practice. And we just had something on funding with Kim Seals, which Jermaine knows well because y'all are in the same. But there's all these different opportunities, I think, that are free and still connect. Like Atlanta Startup Village virtually happens again. We started that back up, pitch practice. So I think building that network and knowing the different players allows you to start to be like, all right, I'm getting a feel for these different communities and how we can kind of connect. Obviously, I have to say, if you want to join Atlanta Tech Village, we have like 50 amazing advisors and mentors who all through COVID are still meeting and connecting. And we have different groups within the village, like our 6-figure club and 7-figure club, who are actively connecting with each other. So even if it's not our community, I think even in a COVID era, digitally, to your point, Jeff, like, you can still start to meet people and learn and grow. And I think that's kind of the biggest end of the funnel to eventually find that person that you think would be a good match for you.
Awesome.
Yeah, I like the social media kind of aspect as well. And I guess I think I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, and they're evolving, but find some people that are one tier above you, not like multiple tiers ahead of you. That way you can find someone and then maybe ask them, who has been working with those, with them, right? So if they're a tier above you and, and she's, crushing it, and, she's got maybe some mentors she might have that she might be working with or may recommend. So word of mouth, but digitally. So if you see someone who's active, to Karen and Jermaine's point, online, and they're a tier above you, ask them, like, who are they talking to? Who are they working with? What are they listening to? And see where they are, so you can achieve that, that new level.
Because let's be real, like, whoever, like Jermaine, who's commenting on your posts, who's commenting on your blogs. Like, if you're doing it in a way that's not like great read, but like actually like engaging with you on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever, like, we all kind of know. So I think if there's that consistent voice, you can already start to build a relationship with somebody, and those authors and people on the other side, unless most of them are we're seeing who they are.
It's that. Yeah, I would say that's a really, really great tip for those of us that blog. If somebody comments a few times and then asks for a call, it's hard for me to say no.
Yeah.
You've been one of the commenters. I gotta listen. You all have huge hearts, and I was excited to have you on this call to talk about mentorship and advising, because I know that that's core to who you are. And look, you didn't disappoint. I think there's so much in here that either if you're looking for a mentor, or if you're looking to mentor people, This has got some great information in here. So we'll see if people do the hard work. But I appreciate you all so much, and we'll list ways people can get in touch. Certainly, we all agree the Village is the best place to start a company in this city. I do tell people that every time. It's like, I don't even care if it's just for 6 months. You got to be there. You got to be a part of it, experience it. So certainly we're all big fans, but I appreciate your time today, you guys. You guys are the best.
Thanks for bringing us together, Jeff.
All right. See you soon.